Окей, тоді, я думаю, починаємо. Я тоді перейду на англійську, якщо ніхто не проти. І стартуємо. Окей, so what are we going to talk today is basically, so what we are going to overview today is basically objectives and motivation of learning about cloud ML and learning about the capabilities of machine learning in the cloud. Then we are going to do the overview of common machine learning problems and how are they different from each other and what you should use to solve each of them. Then also you could, then we are going to look at the available tools which are already built and how to use them. Also very quickly about data scientist role evolution that we are seeing. What are the common cloud providers, and then some small demo of the current machine learning capabilities on GCP. So at first, I think we'll find this one. I think everyone is knowing this Venn diagram of who is data scientist, and except for being the sexiest job of 20th century, data scientist is also a combination of computer science, mathematics, and domain. Usually we all start in machine learning when we know some coding, we know some statistics, and then over the course of years we acquire the domain knowledge in particular area, or sometimes we need to acquire it very fast, and we became data scientists. So that's how the data scientist role used to be so far, but in recent time it's changing. So later I will talk how I see this role is actually changing. But before that, as I said, there will not be a need for the deep understanding of machine learning or coding in here. So what will be enough is understanding that this diagram, this very complex one, is that in the simplest version, in the supervised version, machine learning is when you have input data and you have a set of labels, and you train the model, which we could treat as a black box in this workshop, to do the predictions based on inputs, and then you remove labels, feed the model with the inputs, and doing the predictions. So that's what basically machine learning is. And then what you will do, you will usually uncover this black box of what is the model and play with the data and so on, but not in here. So this understanding should be enough to proceed. And then what are the current common machine learning problems? So this is not a common diagram. You will not usually see it anywhere else, but I'm using it to explain the clients what type of problem they have and what tools they need. So on the x-axis, you have specificity of your problem, while on y-axis you have actually the skill set that you need and how complex and how long you will need to solve this problem. So as you can see in this example, correlation is actually causation. So in this example, correlation is actually causation. So the more complex, the more I would call it specific problem you have, the more complex skill set and more advanced you should be. So very first, at the bottom left, you are having a common problems. Like let's imagine problem of common object classification. So it's dogs, cats, cars, people, face recognition. Those are all very common problems, and for those, you are likely going to find an existing solution which you could apply right away. It's going to work very, very good, and there is no need to reinvent the vehicle. Now, if you move one step to the right, you will find that you might have a problem that is still the same problem. For example, dog breed prediction. So it's still the classification problem. In the problem framework, it's the same as classifying cats versus dogs. It's the same as classifying mops versus husky. It doesn't really matter. So pugs versus husky. So it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, you will not likely find any existing solution, any already built for you solution for that. So then you will likely find a solution where if you have your data, you could plug in your data, and basically there will be a black box system which will train the model for you based on your data. So if your problem is still a standard problem, but with very specific data set, then you will likely use other set of tools. And then finally, let's imagine a problem that you would like to build a startup, which by the picture predicts what would be the best name for your pet. So this is a problem which requires both computer vision, and NLP. And first of all, you will not find a ready solution for that. Also, it's not a classification, it's not a regression or segmentation, it's not a very common problem. So that's why you will need to solve this problem yourself or find a research team which will do the right research, which will connect both computer vision and NLP and some of the engineering and come up with the solution to that problem. So knowing this problem types, we could go into the tool set that you have for them. So for example, for this very basic problems, let's say common object classification or sentiment analysis or translation or many others like sign detection in the video or object tracking, there will be an already existing solution, which will be called usually a machine learning API. So machine learning API is the built and pre-trained model, which was deployed somewhere on cloud. And you have an API wrapper and you have a protocol like what you need to feed to this model, whether it's an image, whether that's a text or whatever. And this model will likely give you the output. And you are just paying per hit, so you're paying per number of images you are posting. So that will be if your problem is already solved on. Now, if you have the second type of a problem, when you have a specific data set but known problem, you will use basically something called machine learning as a service solution, where you have and it's currently growing very fast. So you have this data set of yours, and there is a tool which allows you to upload this data set, and you need to have a label. You need to have labels. So often, if you don't have labeled data set, you would have option either to outsource labeling to the team on the cloud provider side, like Amazon Trunk or Google labeling services, or you could do it even yourself in the tool. And then you could feed this data set to the black box, which will train the model, source code for which you will never get, but then you will have a one button saying deploy, and afterwards, your model will be deployed like any other of those services. So what you are doing with this Cloud ML, you're actually building your own and deploying your own API specific for your problem. And now, finally, if you are very, creative and in the situation when you have a specific problem, you will need to solve this problem with specific tools. So in this case, for example, you will need to use some deep learning framework for image processing. You will need use some framework for NLP, and then you will need to write some code. And this together will get you the solution. So you need to have this high level of skills or a team. But when you build this solution, you will likely have a model which take an image and output the name of the pet, and you still somehow need to deploy it, you need to manage it and scale it. And for that, there is this another helping tool, which is called Cloud ML in GCP. And there are alternatives in other clouds as well, which is allowing you to basically take your customly built model. For TensorFlow, it's working just perfect. For PyTorch, it's not that cool, but it still has some support. And you just take in your model, you are plugging it into this service, and it will basically create you again the wrapper and deploy this model as this API. So at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter which problem you have, you could frame it as a machine learning wrapped with the API, which you are just calling from your other services. It's not the only option, but it's the most common one. So looking at this, and this evolution actually happened within last few years that I do remember then maybe 5 years ago, then solving the common object classification was still a valuable task at work, and you could still get the pure classification task to do. Then 2 years ago, if you have a specific data set but known problem like regression or classification or something, you could still get projects like that. But today, most of the projects will be coming from this direction when there is no solution or no machine learning as a services. Sorry for that. So and you will need to work in this multi area problem when you have both NLP, you have computer vision, or at least a few types of computer vision problems together. And this is getting further. So more and more things are actually automated, and more things in machine learning are getting created as a service. So with that, I'll skip this one. With that is coming the evolution of the data scientist role that I've seen. So especially last year, I was working with some large corporations, and in there, I've noticed that previously they had just the data scientist who was doing everything. I mean, all of those problems, all of those tools were the responsibility of one person, while now I'm seeing sometimes implicit, sometimes explicit change towards two roles. First one will be data science architect, and second one will be data science researcher. So now, if you're talking about data science architect, that will be the person that is perfectly aware of this part of the, let's say, of the graph. So he knows, or he or she actually knows all the tools. He or she knows what are their capabilities and limitations, and knows how to connect them together, and what's need to be researched and what could be used out of the box. Now, so when usually the project will come, let's say you're having a photo stock company coming to you saying they would like to, first of all, classify images, then classify breeds of pets, and then predict the name for the pet. So this guy will sit and say, okay, first and second, we are doing with the API services. For the third, there is no known solution. So we need to do the research on that. And then only when there is this research problem, you will get a person who is a data science researcher. So that will be more narrowly specialized person, let's say only in computer vision, or only in some area of computer vision, like segmentation or something. And then this person will be perfectly aware of the latest research papers and of the latest capabilities. And this person will just build the proof of concept for the research problem that you have. So this person will be the one who sits in the Jupyter notebook or in pure Python, and then create this end-to-end pipeline to get the image and predict the name of the pet. And then this POC will go again to this data science architect, who will wrap it and deploy it to cloud. So this is how the segregation is usually done. And I'm seeing that this trend more and more. So if you are only starting your, I would say, career as data scientist, I would think, which path would you choose? Because from that will depend actually what job you will do and what you need to learn. Because if you are, for example, a software engineer right now, and you would like to start with data science, you would be much easier to start with the architect part, because it requires much more coding. While if you are coming from the scientific background, you will be comfortable, more comfortable with papers and actually doing the research part, publishing papers. So that's why you need to think, because I think in the near future that will be two separate positions. And finally, I think, yeah. So speaking about those services that we discussed, going back one step, I think it's important to understand that each of them has pros and cons. So for example, if you're using definitely already built services, you are lucky because you don't need the data, you don't need the model code, you don't need anything, you just take it and use it. The main con of that will be the price, because usually you will pay more. So my general suggestion would be, if you have a problem that was solved and there is a service for that, and you are on an early stage, first of all, use service to validate that this problem is feasible for you and pay for the service for a month or two. And then if it's feasible and you are seeing benefits, only then start building your own model. Secondly, you could even use the service if you don't have label data. For example, you would like to do image classification and you don't have label data set. Use the service to label a first data set. Then you could train your model on this first data set, then label a smaller part of the data set better, and tune the model so it starts performing better than the service. So this is just general piece of advice if you are working in that field and you are having concerns regarding the prices of the services. And now, as I said, I think we'll start with a short demo of the capabilities of those services. I will be using Google Cloud, as in my mind, it's the most intuitive interface. And also, usually I'm holding this workshop as live, and we are doing some coding examples and some coding. And with Google, you could get $500 immediately discount for a year, with $500 credits for a year. This is more than enough to learn how it works and to explore what you need. Some startups even start with that and then become successful. So that's why it's the easiest option to start. But if you look on the picture, you would see that AWS and Azure are leading the cloud world, but last few years, Google was the fastest growing one. So I think in the near future that might change because they have a very good partnership program. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which cloud you are using, as long as you know one. All the others will be very intuitive because they are basically the same. They will just invent new logo and name the service differently, but nothing except branding changes. So that's why we will use GCP here. And I will start with the API services, so this part. Then we'll go quickly and see how this cloud ML works, and we will try to win Kaggle competition with no lines of code. And we will not touch this part as that will require much more time. So very first one, so what do you have? You have already trained services for vision, so everything which is related to images, for video processing, for speech, natural language, and as an addition to natural language, there is a service for translation. And I think we could start with the video intelligence. So I will open it up. Actually, they have quite a good, I would call it that demo on the page, while you could use, where you could process your video. So you could upload your video, select one of theirs and see what are the capabilities. So let's take this one. I'm not sure. I don't think you will hear the sound right now. Will you? Okay. So then if you don't hear the sound, let's wait a second while it's processing the video. And while it's processing, to save some time, we could go and explore the capabilities. So what you can do with video processing is you could annotate the video with predefined set of labels. So it's basically classification. So you could have a rough idea of what the video is about. Then during the course of video, position of the camera could be changing, and you could identify those shifts. So it's called scene detection. Then also you could do object tracking within a video. So you just need to initialize the tracking with the bounding box, or let's say of the face at the beginning, and then it will do the tracking till the moment it's lost, and then it will report that it's lost and you need to reinitialize it. Then you could do text extraction, you could do explicit content detection, and also in the beta, you could do logo detection. So some of the companies are using logo detection to see if if their companies are, how to call that, misadvertised or advertised in a bad way by some of the competitors. So now let's go and see what's this video posting on. So, wow, let's see. So we have this video clip, and at first there will be, if this clip would be about a single thing, there will be labels for the clip. As we can see, it was quite diverse in here. So we can see it was about people being very happy that they've got fiber, I think. And yeah, that's definitely happy face. They've got internet, so they are now connected. And very first, as I said, it's shot changes. So when the camera position is changed, you could see that there was 84 different scene changes. And you could see that for each of them, you could identify, the, let's call, set of labels. Actually, if you go to Azure, they will also be able to identify a set of actions. So for example, from, let's say, frame 28 to frame 30, there was movement. From frame 30 to frame 35, the bird was flying. So they are more advanced in video processing by analyzing the actions as well. But with Google, you could analyze each of these scenes. Also, you could analyze whether there is any chance of violence or pornography. So most of the companies are currently using that on their stocks to prevent violent or explicit videos. And yeah, that's basically it. So in terms of video processing, GCP is, I would say, quite behind the others, but I think it's a matter of time because they are quite ahead of the others in terms of image processing, and that's basically very, very similar. Should you know how to process images, you will know how to process videos soon. Now, if you are interested in pricing, we'll not spend much time here, but for the video processing, you are paying per minute. So you get first 1,000 minutes a month for free, and then you pay basically from 5 to 15 cents per minute of the video processing, depending on what task you are doing. So whether you're doing speech transcription by different languages or you're doing shot detection, that will be the price, and you could go to the website and explore it further. But now talking about alternatives, I think, should be better. I think the most plausible alternative for the video processing is Azure, as they are having this, as I said, very important part of facial recognition. They have also sentiment analysis for faces. They also have person tracking, so not just the common object tracking, but person tracking, and also brand recognition. So they are the most advanced here. Important for the Amazon is that they have activity detection, and that's also might be applicable. But I think with the time, the most often you will still use the scene change and object detection. Now, that was about the video processing, and I think you will not use that much. More likely, you will use natural language processing or image processing. So if you go to image processing, what the most common tasks will be, first of all, labeling the images and detecting where they were used in web. Secondly, that will be optical character recognition. Then sometimes you will use logo detection or landmark detection. Then if you are having problem of that you need to support multi-platform, sometimes you will need to crop your images, and definitely, as with video, you need to do the explicit content detection. So for all of that, there is a service. And again, we could use their demo in here. So to explore what are the capabilities. So for example, I will take the image and we'll try to see what it can. So for sure not. So actually this is the mem, and it's written in a very strange language, some kind of a mix of Ukrainian. But again, you got a lot of cats. That means that everything is fine. But if you go to labels, you could see that it's basically this could detect set of labels. I think it was pre-trained on ImageNet about the image. Also, it could detect with which search queries this image is associated, and the full set of web pages where it used. So for example, I know some of the stock companies who on top of this API built their service to check whether no one is stealing their images. So if they have an image, they will use the service to detect who else has posted this image. And basically, if they don't have this company like for whom they sold this image, they will just go and ask them to remove it or ask them to pay. So that's one of the application. And also, this is just actually this is reverse Google image search on steroids. Also, it could definitely do with the text recognition, so OCR. Actually, recently in last year or two, if you are having part of the problem as OCR, it's very unlikely that you will build anything custom. The most likely solution will be that you will use the cloud or use the text tract or use something pre-built. So there is no need to build a vehicle here. And I think it's the most often used part of the image processing API. And also it could suggest you how to crop your image and suggest that this image was actually edited and it's not authentic. And also it could suggest that other tools, it's not always working very accurately. Let's try another image to see what are the other capabilities. So let's try, I think, where is this one? Yeah, let's try another mem. So this is the mem about coronavirus right now. And I don't think it's very, but as you can see, it could even understand the mem. So I think explaining the memes is a very bad tone, but I will do that. So actually you have 5 faces of this guy. Let me open this mem better. So you have laughing at coronavirus memes, like, and evolution of the expression from joy to, I mean, I would call this one terrifying. And let's see what actually the AI can. So as you can see, it identified a set of faces here, identify 5 faces. And actually it could have identified that, and it identified that at the first face, it's very joyful, while you will see that from face, I mean, as we go from face to face, the level of joy will decrease. So that's a funny thing that although you need to show emotions quite explicitly, but this tool is working quite good. So it's reliable, I would say. In terms of objects, you have 5 persons here, and also importantly to say, you have the capability of key points detection. So you could identify the key point. This is very important if you're doing facial recognition or face reenactment on other computer vision tasks. Also, you will have with which web entities it's searched and where it's used, and the text identified, and whether it's yeah. So again, it was created an image. Let's try maybe one more. I think this one. So I mentioned it could do the landmark detection. So for example, I took the picture. It was not my picture. I've stolen this one from somewhere from the web, but it's St. Sophia Cathedral. And as I said, it's a known landmark, and you could test it with many more. And it will be able to identify you the location I mean, with which again search terms it's associated, where it's was posted, and also, I mean, whether it's safe to search or not. So that's, I think, let's maybe try only one more. Someone from, I was using on a summer school, so let's see. Use this one. So this is image from summer school. And you can see it identified two faces. Now, from further away, it's not doing a very good job in identifying the emotions, but it could identify that at least Alexei is a little bit joyful. And actually, what is funny, I would not expect it, but it actually was able to identify the text even at such aspect ratio. So that's quite impressive, and even this very small on the badge. So that's in terms of, and then definitely it's fully safe to be there. And that's about the capabilities. So if you are looking into applying it again, if you're looking into applying it, you could, and playing more with it, you could actually, they have a very good set of lessons. So they have those things called code labs. So you could go to their website and basically begin code lab, and you will get the step-by-step overview, what you need to do. I mean, just the screenshot, what you need to select, how to select the API key, how to upload the image, and the exact commands you could follow. And actually, it's very easy to start. And also, you could run this all, although you don't really need, you could run this all on GCP enabled Collab notebook. So for example, in here, there is the notebook showing the whole flow. So there is a sign in Chinese, and then you will basically do the, at first, language detection, then you will do the translation part, then you will do OCR on English, and then you could actually follow it step by step and learn how to use it better. So from the capabilities, as I said, this is the full list. And if you go to the comparison analysis, you could see that they are leading in terms of image processing. Only, I think ABM is having something very keen on food because they missed a lot of things, but they are doing food recognition. But I don't think you will encounter that much. So that very quickly was about image processing. And that would be a good time for coding, though we don't have that much time. So we're going to skip quickly to the natural language processing. So this is 4 common tasks that you could solve with the natural language processing. It's extracting entities, detecting sentiments, analyzing syntax, and classifying the context. So basically, if you have a sentence, it would be able to identify you at first the structure and language parts and dependency between words. Also, it could do the classification of the context into different categories. Many of the, I mean, companies are using that to classify the incoming articles. And also it could do a sentiment analysis. So we could even try it a little. So let's take, I mean, let's take any sentence about the only topic that is currently dominated in the world, and let's even try it so we could analyze it. I'm not. And as we can see, let's go to the sentiment, let's say. So you have here a score and a magnitude. So magnitude is basically how powerful it is, and the score says whether it's actually positive or negative. So as you can see on each sentence, you will get the sentiment score. It's and on average, you get it on the whole piece of text. But for example, if you you could try to play it, and actually you could see that it will be negative at first, and then you could try to actually try to actually play with it slightly more and see whether it could grasp the complex parts. And it's actually sometimes doing mistakes, but on average, it's doing a quite good job. Then you could see the syntax, and you could see that it's actually, although it's adjusting the height with exclamation mark, it's still thinking that the sentence is correct. So you could see the morphology, you could see lambs, parts of speech, and so on. And in terms of categories, that's hard to classify, but in terms of entities, it's just the one. I mean, it's named entity recognition. It was also only able to identify service. If we call here, let's try. So basically, it just identified the apple and suggested you the article in the Wikipedia about Apple. So that's very fast how you could utilize this one. And regarding the main capabilities, that will be text to speech and speech to text eventually. Then you could extract key phrases, you could classify the content, you could do syntax analysis, detect parts of speech, and also additionally they have this chatbot tool set. Now the sad news is that they don't really support Ukrainian for now. Then the only way the Ukrainian is supported is for translation. So that's sad news. But if you're looking for something for English, I think it's a really cool tool to use. Especially, for example, in my projects, I am more of a computer vision guy, so I'm not that skilled in NLP, not that fun. So I will usually solve the CV part myself, but if there is a small NLP part, I will just take one of those services and use it instead of doing the research. So as for the pricing, I think you could review it afterwards. And finally, there will be part about speech. So with the speech, the main thing that you will use is actually two things. First of all, you could use the language identification from speech. And secondly, you could use speech to text, so to understand that you are getting, I mean, what you are getting, and then you could analyze the text. So that's how it will usually work. So I would just put some piece of the song in French and ask it to transcribe it. Unfortunately, again, I think most of the languages are currently supported, though the accuracy will be the highest for Chinese, English, French, or Spanish. So as you can see, it was detected, and you can see that it was detected quite correctly as far as my French is suggesting. So that's how to use it. And then basically the workflow will be, you will convert it to text and then do the text analysis. For example, they are stating that you could do speech recognition, language detection, appropriate content filtering, punctuation, speaker deorization, and multi-channel recognition. So the only ones that I have not showed, and it's very important, is those two. So if you have a conference call and you have multiple people speaking, you could use the service to transcribe the call, and actually, I mean, you will get speaker number 1, 2, and 3, and then you will have the dialogue with the phrase associated with each speaker. So that's an important part. And I think regarding the speech capabilities, that's it. So this is the comparison. So you can see the full list of their, their capabilities. And if you go here, other that might be interesting are other that might be interesting are voice verification. So that's the one which is used by banks. Also, another one that might be interesting is used is actually filtering inappropriate content. You could do it even live. So that's also an important part. So that was about already built APIs. And now the only part left is that, imagine the situation when, as we discussed with the breed prediction, you are in a case when your problem is not yet solved. So for example, you are a meteorologist, and you want to predict weather trends from types of clouds you are seeing. So you could have, you could use images to analyze the clouds, but actually, you know that there are more than 10 types of clouds. If you just plug these clouds into the cloud API, what you will get only clouds. So you plug clouds into clouds and get clouds. So that's how it will work. Not much help here. And actually, you know that to predict the weather patterns, you need to know the types of clouds. So you're a person who understands that. You got the collection of, let's say, 1,000 images, and you could label them by those 10 types. So what you will do, you will use the thing which is called AutoML. You will upload your images there. Then you will label them, or you will upload it and labeled, or you will ask someone to label them, giving instructions. And then you will just select what features you are interested in and what is the target variable, and basically train the model. You will pay only for hours of training, and then you will just press one button, as I said, deploy it as your custom API. So you could do this with images, with video, with natural language, and also with tabular data. And that's the one I'm going to show you in more detail. And also with translation, if you have some very specific language, language of Star Wars or something, and you want to your translation service to work, you could train it if you have a large enough data set. But with those, you could basically do the same things that I've showed with APIs, but for your custom data sets. So as I said, for images, you could do classification, detection, and segmentation. And basic segmentation is currently supported only in beta, but that should soon be fully production. And also you could export your model and port it on edge devices. So you don't need even to host it in cloud. As well as with natural language, you could do the classification, entity extraction, and sentiment analysis. And with tables, you could solve two tasks. You could solve with tabular data, you could solve classification and regression. But also, I think recently they started supporting recommender engines. So if you are having a problem of building recommender engine, you could just plug in your transactions data inside the system, and eventually the system will solve you will start giving you the recommendations. So if we want to see how this works, especially I think the tables part, let's go for a second to another browser window. Yeah, so here I have the interface. So this is called Google Cloud Console. And as I said, I was using these free credits for those demos. And what I found this old Kaggle challenge of 7 or so years ago called Blue Book for Bulldozers. So basically your price, the task was to predict what is the sale price for the, on the auction for which the piece of equipment will be sold. And there was a huge data set with, I think, 54 or 55, 53 columns. And if you, let me see how much we had records. So we had we had more than that. So we had 400,000 records. And a lot of them were missing. So what very thing you could do, you could just go to your tables interface and you could upload the data set. So you create a new one and upload it. I will not do this as it's quite time consuming, but then you go to your data set. And as soon as it's loaded, you will see all of the fields that it's identified from the CSV. There are two options to import, from CSV or from BigQuery, which is another GCP service. Now, as soon as it's identified, you will see which one of them contain nulls, which one of them are numeric or categorical, how many missing values you have, how many invalid values, distinct values you have, and also you could see the distribution between values and which optimal option was chosen. You could actually try to change the options from text to categorical and so on. And yeah, so that's how you could play with the data set. Now, you will need to only thing you need to do, you need to identify what is the right target column. For example, in my case, that was sale price, and then select which features you are interested in, and basically, yeah, let me just find it. So you, as it was identified as the time series data, it chose in the time column as the partition column, and you could actually save this and train the model. So you could select the budget. So how long you want to train it. Let's say I want to train it for 3 hours. And you could select, which columns to include. You could select the problem type. So in my case, it's regression problem. I'm predicting the price, the data split, and then you could see some of the advanced options like which metric to use to evaluate the model. I think in this part it was used root mean squared logarithmic error. So you need to go there again and basically change it. And then you could train it, the model, and in 3 hours you will get the trained model. Actually, luckily I've got one. So you could see how my model was trained, and then you could evaluate the model basically by two means. You could either upload a CSV with your test set, or, it's test and use. You could either upload the CSV with your test set or take the data from GCP. And now if you look into the result that my model reached, it was root mean squared logarithmic error was around 291. And let's go to Kaggle and see what that would be that time. So I think it would still be in bronze. So that was the first attempt right away. I would not say it's very impressive now, knowing that that was 7 years ago, but 7 years ago, someone spent a hell of a lot of time to get that far. And currently you could get that far with, less than 3 hours, of which creative hours of your work will be 5 minutes. So that's just like the problem. And that's showing how fast everything is evolving and how fast this ML as a service tools on clouds and others like Data Robot are evolving and automating things that people used to do. So, and that will only, I think, speed up. So that's why it's very important to, as we discussed at the beginning, I think to choose the right path which you are in, and I think it was there, and either start learning those tools to be able to use them, because it's not like there are a set of tools and there is a business who just go and grab them. As the more tools you get, the more people you need to manage them, so that you will become one of those people. Or start digging into some research area and building very deep but narrow expertise and being some of these guys. So at the end of the day, you are not the guy which is doing the same things that actually CloudML could do, because it will be cheaper. So from what I've said, I think that's about it. I'm sorry for a very fast pace. I was trying to, usually this is hold for 5-6 hours and live, not online. But as I said at the beginning, the objective was to give as much, as much context as possible. And then if you were interested in some of those in more details, you could definitely ask questions. You could reach to me, or you could explore the documentation and go further. But if you're a person who would like to build a startup, and some of the things your startup is what you would like to use is machine learning, try to find at first already existing service which is doing this part, test your idea, and only then start building it yourself, because you could end up in the situation when you are with the technology, but this technology isn't required by no one. And I've seen a lot of such cases. So at first, but use those credits, pay a few $100 for usage of the cloud first month, but validate your idea, and only then start building your technology. Because although it might look very straightforward, you will end up spending 4 or 5 months building the technology and then not getting anywhere. Finalizing, I think you might have got some questions, and we'll get there for a second. Also, if this webinar was not super boring, as the quarantine is started and we are on a total lockdown, I started the YouTube channel where I'm going to review some of the startup ideas and how you could apply data science, and in general many other things. There are only 2 videos which are not that great there yet, but in the future much more will come. So feel free to subscribe and give your feedback. And I think as the advertisement is finished, we could go to questions. So yeah, so now we have, let's start. So the first question is, does GCP Professional Data Engineer certification enough for DAs to master GCP? It's better to look for architecture related ones. So actually with GCP professional data engineer, it's very tricky because actually there is no specific machine learning certification on GCP right now. They had the plans to actually create one, but those plans are there for very long time, and they haven't gone far with that. So this certification will be most about equally data engineering and machine learning. So you will touch machine learning services, but not very deeply. If you are looking for the certification in machine learning on cloud, then I would suggest going with AWS machine learning certification, as it's heavily focused on only machine learning services they have. So now if you still need to use GCP, I would suggest going with the data engineer one and then doing self-education and taking the Coursera course on machine learning on GCP that they have, but very rapidly. Do not spend much time there. You will better learn through practice, and it's very intuitive how it works, so you don't need to take too much education. It's better to learn through practice. So I hope this was answered. Now, and if you're looking for the architect courses and architect certification, it will be mostly about big data actually, and you don't need that much knowledge if you're. It might be useful, but I think it might be too time consuming to go right away there. Now, exist some ML cloud tools for handwritten OCR and handwritten math formulas? Oh, that's a good question, actually. So let's see. I think actually, yeah, let's take it. So, depending on the language, because for example, if you are, and I will steal this image. If you are using, if you are looking for something for English, I think it should not be a problem at all. So Vision AI, let's try it. Even Cloud ML is actually capable of recognizing handwritten text and not. But for example, yeah, so text. For English, it works quite good. Now, actually, before the demo, I've tried this with Ukrainian, and I shouldn't shown you that, but I've tried to write something, and you could see my handwriting is awful in itself, but let's see how it performs for Ukrainian. And I mean, giving you a spoiler, it's still trying to. Actually, it's trying to detect something, but it's especially, there are multiple problems in here. Problem number 1, it's lightning condition. Problem number 2 is that it's not plain paper. Problem number 3 is that it's handwritten. Problem number 4, it's Ukrainian. So those all together lead to this very unexpected results. Actually, when we are doing handwritten recognition, what we will usually do, we will first of all try to equalize the lightning condition, remove this, and also try to select the areas. Then we will remove all those false positives. But even though it still was able to identify that it's Ukrainian language, and that some of the letters, except for, I mean, unfortunately, except for the E and B, which in my writing, even for humans, hard to identify. So answering your question, you could use most of those APIs for handwritten language recognition. As for the math formulas, that's much harder. So I don't think there will be something that will, I'm not aware of something that will take handwritten and return you, let's say, LaTeX or other format. So for that, I think we need to do more of a research. Now, how flexible is AutoML? Can you choose the model? Yeah, so if you are talking about AutoML, it's actually not flexible at all. Let's be honest. So the only flexibility you have flexibility of choosing the problem type. Either that's a classification, recommender engine, or regression. But model in itself is a black box. And honestly, if you go there, you could see that, let's see, go there for a second. You could see the model type. I think there will be something. Yeah, sorry for that. They don't have it anymore. But in the past, they had also information about the model, and there was a size. And from the size of the model, it was really easy to conclude that this model is actually a TensorFlow model because it was huge. So when you are working with AutoML, you don't have the option to export your source code and source code of the model or the model itself. The only option for you is to take this model and deploy it on cloud and start using it. But then you will have to pay per hit, per request to the model. So this is their pricing model. In the short run, if you are just validating the idea, it's quite lucrative to use. But then in the long run, if the model should be heavily used, usually you will replace it with the custom one. If you are looking for the solution where you could choose the model type, there will be there will be others. You could go for, Data Robot or other alternatives where you could just select that will do jobs. First of all, it will evaluate 100 or dozens of models, and then you could choose what exactly are you interested in there. So as for now, it's a total black box. Now, regarding the courses related to CloudML, as I said, I think there is a Coursera GCP data engineer whole specialization, but I'm not sure. Personally, I was taking it, and many of the courses I've took on a speed, let's say 1.5, because it's not bad, but I would say with AutoML, you don't need to have a heavy training to start. So if you have time and opportunity to pass the GCP certification preparation or exam, I would suggest to go for that. If not, I don't think you need to have the full to take the full course. Yep. So in case of use of any cloud solution on an embedded device, it's necessary the device to be constantly connected into the internet. So I think there is option to export your model and not to and actually run on device with the decent performance. So you don't need to actually be connected to the internet. So that's one of the benefits. But if you are talking about now, you should distinguish the APIs and the CloudML. If you trained your custom models and want to export them to Edge, you could do this with CloudML. But if you want to use all of the existing API, I don't think you will be able to use it offline. So that's the thing. But in general, there is option to be not connected. Also, I think most of the latest deep learning frameworks as well, even if you don't use the GCP or you use GCP to train your model, allows you quite easily to deploy to edge device. Like with TensorFlow or PyTorch, that should be very fast. So you could if you have a common problem and don't have a data set, you could use ML API to label this data set and then train something yours, and then win in the long run. And як почати ознайомлюватись з Data Science. Так, якщо if you are speaking about, I don't know which language to choose, but how to get familiar with data science. So and start learning. So first of all, I would say it's very hard if you just if you are dedicated and you just think, okay, I will start the Coursera course, machine learning with Andriy, and I will become a data scientist or machine learning engineer in a month. That might be a hard path because it's hard to stay motivated. So there are a few things I would suggest. First of all, yeah, for sure, take the course, especially now when it's such time, but also try to take some group learning. Maybe try to go for a few summer schools. You have one here in UCU. Even if it's online, you have summer school from other institutions as well, I think, or you have winter school. So try to find people who are also learning that and try to go from the practical direction. So if you have the idea of, if you would like to learn a computer vision, or you would like to learn NLP, try to find the startup idea that really drives you. And then connect the startup idea with the deep learning, and then start working on your pet project and learning this with, and start learning towards implementing this pet project. And that will be motivating you even more. And then if you go to hackathon or you go to summer school or winter school, you could always propose this as a project idea and try to implement it there, or contribute to someone else's idea. So try go through this practical parts. And for sure, take the courses. There are cool courses on Udemy. You could take, if you are looking into intro to machine learning course, I would suggest going to YouTube course of Andriy or Stanford, not the Coursera version, because it has much more information in there. And yeah, so that's the suggestion. And finally, so there is so on some division APIs are accessible and by for feeds run. Yeah, so thanks for that comment. I will go to this one. So that's totally true. And I think there are no more other questions in here. So if there are no, let me just check it for sure. So yeah, so all of the questions were answered. So then I'll go back here. So then I think we are 5 minutes late. It's still fine. I was expecting worse. So then thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I hope you find it useful. Should you have any questions, you could reach out to me later. And in the, again, hope there will be new events, and I hope this lockdown will bring us all a very productive learning time, and we will be, even better prepared when it's over. So thank you everyone for joining again. Bye. And I think maybe people want to say something. So yeah.
Дякую всім, що доєдналися до нашого курсу. Дякую, Андрію. Всім гарного вечора.
Всім гарного вечора, дуже дякую.